Hello everyone, I'm Eleanor. I'm a project assistant with Archaeology Scotland, and I'm going to talk about some of our ongoing work related to the Prehistoric Pioneers project, where we are celebrating Scotland's earliest megalithic monuments and the legacies of the women who investigated them. In this talk, I'm hoping to take everyone on a journey from the Neolithic, a big jump forward to the mid-20th century, and then forwards again to today. We'll look at Scotland's earliest Neolithic monuments, but also consider how they've been studied and the stories of people who conducted this work. I'll finish by introducing our Prehistoric Pioneers project and some of the work and kind of sub-projects involved in that. As a huge theme of this talk today is storytelling, I'd like to start by setting the scene. Instead of sitting in your house, imagine yourself looking out to sea. You aren't quite on the beach, but further up the steady slope of a sheltered bay. Hills rise either side of you, and in the distance you can make out the shape of a series of islands rising from the low waves. Occasionally, the breeze blows in the sounds of sheep and cattle on the hills, or the calls of birds break through overhead. At the sound of human voices, you turn and see a small group of people arrive. They stop short of where you stand, at an arrangement of large stones. They are now deep in conversation, gesturing at points on the ground as they talk. One older woman walks a little away from the group and the set stones, and gestures at the earth next to her feet. One of the men points up the slope, out of the bay, before drawing a line back towards where she stands. They both smile, their agreement enough for the rest to affirm their support too. The group turn to go, none resisting the urge to reach out and touch the stones before they do, all imagining how this place will look in a few weeks' time. Their vision is nearly complete, and so a monument is born. The Neolithic was the time of the first monument builders in Scotland. When we talk about the Neolithic, I think it's really important to have a bit of context. So this timeline shows the different periods of prehistory in Scotland, beginning with the Paleolithic through to the Iron Age. The Paleolithic, Mesolithic and Neolithic make up what we know as the Stone Age. Their names literally meaning the Old, Middle and New Stone Age. And just to put this into perspective, here is the Neolithic on another timeline. Here is where Britain becomes an island, as sea levels rise and cut off the mainland from continental Europe around 6000 BC during the Mesolithic. Here is the Neolithic, and then here is the whole of written history. The people who built these tombs are further away from the Romans in Britain than we are now. The Neolithic lasted from around 4000 to 2500 BC. So this is a period of time that represents about 1,500 years or 60 generations. It was a period of huge change. The early Neolithic saw the arrival of farming to Scotland. People cultivated cereals for the first time and began to raise cattle, sheep and pigs, although people still hunted and gathered non-domestic plants too. This is also the period where people began to make pottery and developed new forms of stone tools. Neolithic people were skilled craftspeople, making everything from gorgeous polished stone axe heads to mysterious carved stone balls. They would have also produced material that we don't find in the archaeological record, and this could have ranged from carved wooden objects to basketry and textiles. Some people likely began to live more sedentary lives, although there is significant evidence, particularly of the Middle Neolithic, that some people lived more mobile lives. And through this period, people are building monuments. Some are comprised of banks and ditches, enclosing large areas of space. Others involve constructions of earth, wood or stone. Some of the most iconic of these monuments are the early Neolithic chambered tombs. And when we say the early Neolithic, we're looking at this period from 4000 to 3400 BC. But what is a chambered tomb? Chambered tombs are one of the best preserved varieties of early Neolithic monuments. They involve the construction of a chamber or chambers using slabs of stone to essentially create boxes. The chambers were then roofed with a capstone or corbelling, which is where overlapping stones are built up to form a roof. Most of these chambers are quite small, and some may only have been accessible from above, meaning that unless the capstones only went on when these monuments were closed and finished being used, it meant that they would need to be lifted on and off. Many of these sites were enclosed within a cairn, so covered in stones or a mound of earth. Some of these were absolutely huge cairns or mounds, making these tombs prominent features in the landscape. Many of these mounds just don't survive today because of erosion, and if it was a cairn, the stone material may have been robbed away in the preceding centuries. These tombs are found across the UK, Ireland and the Isle of Man, with regional variations. There are further variations in similar monuments which occur later in the Neolithic, but these are the core groups for the early Neolithic. The most relevant to us today are the Clyde cairns, which are found across western Scotland. Their distribution is focused on Argyll and Bute, but they also appear down to Dumfries and Galloway and up to the Western Isles. A second Scottish kind of chambered tomb are the stalled cairns. These are found in northern Scotland, across Caithness, Sutherland and up to Orkney. Clyde cairns are typically trapezoidal in shape, but this shape is formed by the mound and a facade, which sometimes involve the placement of further stones. This created a kind of forecourt area just here, where there would have been more space for people to gather, compared to inside the chambers themselves. Within these chambers there would have been very limited space, but this is where the bodies of the dead would have been placed. We have evidence for a huge variety of burial practices in the UK in the Neolithic. These practices are hard to assign purely separate categories, but they range from the burial of intact or articulated bodies, whether in a tomb or a grave, pit or ditch, through to the bodies that were partly separated and those that were fully disarticulated, perhaps broken down through exposure, deliberate dismemberment or moved after a primary burial. There is also significant evidence for cremation throughout the Neolithic, although this becomes more common towards the end of the period. And cremation is an interesting one as it can occur after several of these stages. So you could cremate an articulated body, or you could collect up fragments of one or multiple individuals and cremate all of that material together. In these monuments overall, we find the remains of men and women, adults and children. Individual bodies are often commingled, meaning we sometimes have to estimate the number of people buried by the occurrences of particular bones. And this is significant in how we interpret these monuments. Was it communal identity being emphasised over the memory of an individual? Did it matter more to be entered into a community of ancestral dead than to be commemorated alone? These monuments are sometimes referred to as houses of the dead, and possibly offered a space for the transformation of the body from an individual to part of a collective deposit to occur. These monuments may also have offered a way of containing the difficult dead. In several cases across the UK, individuals have been found with arrowheads lodged in their bones. Were these people victims of interpersonal violence? Difficult deaths could also apply to those who died of disease before they reached certain milestones in life or were particularly central members of the community. An alternative hypothesis is that these monuments are a way of claiming land, by celebrating a group of founding ancestors and staking a claim to a place by building a large visible monument. The living could then maintain their connection to the land through continued interaction with these monuments. We are limited in what we can learn about the people who built or were buried in this monument by preservation. Our picture for the Neolithic will always be incomplete, but there are some more specific challenges. Created bone survives better in more acidic soils, whereas unburnt bone does not. And acidic soils is what we have a lot of in Scotland. Poor bone preservation places some limits on what we can learn, also through the types of analysis that can be applied. It is more difficult to conduct radiocarbon dating and therefore establish chronologies at these sites. We can consider different phases of monument construction, but it is difficult to know how far apart in time these may have been. At chambered tombs in southern England, radiocarbon dating and applied Bayesian statistics have narrowed down the use of monuments to only a couple of decades in some cases, suggesting it was only 1 or 2 generations buried within them. This just isn't possible without good bone preservation. It also limits how we can apply new aDNA and isotope analysis to consider diet, passability, and genetic relationships. It also means we can't compare the treatment of the body across different sites. But there is still a lot we can learn from these monuments. They obviously required a huge time and effort in their construction, so we can consider what this tells us about social organisation. We can look at where they're positioned in the landscape and think about how people use the land or which landscape features may be referenced in their construction. And we can consider the broader connections between regions. This is particularly apparent within the Irish Sea area, where forms of chambered tombs with clear points of similarity are found in Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland and the Isle of Man, such as this site here, Castellanard. Chambered tombs also hold significance. Chambered tombs also hold significance or huge potential for communities. These early Neolithic monuments are often some of the oldest archaeology still visible in the landscape. They offer potential for heritage tourism, as well as chances for people to engage with heritage of the place where they live. This picture from the Adopt a Monument project at Hayley Chamber Tomb in Largs is a great example. The tomb is just up the hill outside the town and is by far the oldest structure in Largs. It's a feature of many people's dog walking route, and even some of the signs for the monument have been there for decades. I'd like everyone to imagine that you are back in that bay again. The horizon is the same, although this time the sea is louder, whipped into choppy, white-capped waves by an autumn wind. If the stones could talk, they'd tell 1,000 stories. The generations who passed through, the bones that returned to the earth, those that feared this place and those that came to live here, the Northmen who came to bury their dead, and the stone carried away to divide the land. No one has been here for a long time now, yet to the stones it has barely been a moment, just a breath in an ongoing conversation. While many of the trees have gone, bracken and other ground vegetation has taken over and not yet died off for winter. A new voice registers above the wind and a woman appears, making her way up from the shoreline. She'd had to walk down to avoid the burn, high from recent rain, and is now reorientating herself. She can't resist a smile when she spots the stones. In the reel of her tape measure and the scratch of her pencil, the site gains another new name. It is now Arg 1. When we think of archaeology, it is easy for our minds to go straight to excavation, and this is a really useful tool for investigating these sites. But it's also really important that we have a record of these monuments, whether we break ground or not. It can help us to better understand and compare their structures, and we can create a record which can be studied and understood by people who can't visit the site themselves. And it's also really important to have a snapshot of the current preservation of a monument, which can be useful in helping protect them for the future. Methods of survey vary. Traditionally, we would just create a scaled plan of the site with accurate measurements and record its orientation. Now we can also employ technical photography as well as photogrammetry, which allows us to create a 3D model of the site. We can now use these models to get dimensions of the site as well as of individual stones, and this is a really great supplement to these traditional plans. The identification and survey of sites was central to the work conducted by Audrey Henshall. Audrey Henshall was a prominent figure in Scottish archaeology and made significant contributions to our understanding of British prehistory. She was born in Oldham in Lancashire in 1927, but moved to Scotland to study archaeology at the University of Edinburgh. She graduated with her MA in 1949 before returning as a research fellow. The work she's perhaps most famous for is The Chambered Tombs of Scotland, which was published in 2 volumes, the first in 1963, the second in 1972. After completing this work, she went on to contribute 64 publications in 67 years, including adding significantly to her survey work with further regional volumes, as well as publishing on her other interests such as Neolithic and Bronze Age pottery and early textiles. She was later appointed Assistant Secretary to the Society of Antiquaries of Scotland during a period of rapid expansion in Scottish archaeology. She was made an honorary fellow shortly after her retirement in 1987. Audrey received an OBE for services to archaeology, as well as the Society's Dorothy Marshall Medal for outstanding contribution to Scottish archaeology in a voluntary capacity. And in 1992, an entire publication called Vessels for the Ancestors, edited by Niall Sharples and Alison Sheridan, was dedicated to her. While many people within the field of British prehistory are familiar with Henschel and her work, the level of knowledge about her career overall, or the work that went into some of her publications, is, at least for people of my generation who didn't know her personally, quite limited. She also isn't a regularly acknowledged figure when we discuss the history of archaeology as a profession, in the same way that we might recognise the names of someone like Gordon Childe or Stuart Pigott. And this is not even considering people outside of the field or who don't know a lot about the history of archaeology, who, when asked to name a prominent archaeologist, may be able to supply Howard Carter or even Indiana Jones. Importantly for us is this volume, The Chamber Tombs of Scotland. This work took her 21 years. She began work on the study in 1951. And between the two volumes, it comprised over 1,000 pages and the records of 595 tombs. This work took up her weekends and holidays for decades, and the National Museum of Antiquities in Edinburgh in the end gave her a year leave to complete the second volume. For this work, she received support from the Archaeology Division of Ordnance Survey, the Royal Commission on the Ancient and Historical Monuments of Scotland, the Department of the Environment, now Historic Environment Scotland, the Society of Antiquaries of Scotland and the Carnegie Trust. While Henschel's work and career were an exceptional contribution, she was not exceptional in her existence as a woman in Scottish archaeology. Margaret Stewart is another woman who had an exceptional career and famously took part in the excavations at Skara Brae in Orkney. Meanwhile, Ursula Betts conducted some of the first archaeological work on Ulva in the Western Islands after a career as an anthropologist. I'm now going to introduce three more figures who were especially influential in our understanding of Neolithic monuments in Western Scotland, but again are not the only further three. Another key figure was Dorothy Marshall, an archaeologist from the Isle of Bute who excavated several Neolithic and Bronze Age sites. She was born in 1900, the youngest daughter of Dr John Nairn Marshall, who was a GP on Bute and a keen amateur naturalist and archaeologist himself. Dorothy studied archaeology at the Institute of Archaeology in London and went on to take part in excavations in the Eastern Mediterranean, including in Cyprus and at Jericho, where she worked as a finds recorder for Kathleen Kenyon, another prominent female figure in archaeology at this time. Marshall returned to Bute, where she worked with the museum and was a key supporter of the local Cowell Archaeological Society, as well as the Scottish regional group for the Council for British Archaeology, which then became Council for Scottish Archaeology, and now in its current form is Archaeology Scotland. Marshall was a key figure in multiple excavations, including at Hayley Chambered Cairn, and she also led the excavations at Ochagan, a multi-period settlement site near Glendaruel in Argyll. Our second figure is Marion Campbell, who also worked in Argyll. She collected a huge body of information about archaeological sites in Mid-Argyll in the 50s and 60s and conducted one survey over a period of 10 years alongside Mary Sandeman. This survey also included some of the amazing archaeology at Kilmartin Glen, as you can see in this picture. Marion was a key figure in the conservation of certain sites and the establishment of the Kilmartin Museum. She also founded the Natural History and Antiquarian Society of Mid-Argyll and was its president and editor of the KIST until the 1990s. And finally, we have Betty Rennie. She was born in 1920 in Glasgow before moving to the Cowell Peninsula as a child. During the Second World War, she managed to get a job in a children's nursery before she went on to work as a primary school teacher until her retirement. In her spare time and on her retirement, she was a dedicated archaeologist, putting together a gazetteer of archaeological sites on the Cowal shore, as well as surveying a series of platforms such as these described in these 2 entries into Discovery and Excavation in Scotland. She was a founding member of the Cowal Archaeological and Historical Society and was awarded an MBE for services to archaeology in Argyll. Like Audrey Henshall, she received the Dorothy Marshall Method for her voluntary contributions to archaeology in Scotland. I hope that it's clear, even just from these brief introductions, that women made a significant contribution to Scottish archaeology in the 20th century. A common theme is that much of their work was unpaid. Even Audrey Henshall, who held positions with the museum, did much of the work in her own time. Others were non-professionals and gave years of their life to documenting archaeological sites and developing their own expertise. The legacy of this work on the West Coast is visible in the local archaeological societies that exist today, as many people continue to want to learn more about and protect their archaeological heritage. And this is where we come in. Archaeology Scotland's work focuses on inspiring people to learn about and care for Scotland's heritage. We have a variety of projects focused on archaeological learning, outreach and community archaeology. One of our core programmes is Adopt a Monument, which was established over 30 years ago now. It has provided hundreds of people with archaeological training or assistance in heritage conservation. And it's under this scheme that we have begun the Scotland's Earliest Megalithic Monuments project. This project is funded by the Society of Antiquaries of Scotland and will eventually involve the excavation of 3 chambered cairns, 2 in Argyll and 1, Leoval in the middle, on South Uist. We'll also involve a series of activities that will be part of a celebration of the legacy of Audrey Henshall. I am one person here today giving this talk, but there's a team of us working on delivering the project in various ways. Gavin and Phil developed the project and are leading it, and Helena does a lot of the unsung work behind the scenes, making sure applications go in at the right time. Phil will be leading the excavation and field work. I will be assisting with this, as well as producing the engagement and outreach content. We've also had some amazing support from other members of our team and members of our board. This project will form part of this overarching theme of Prehistoric Pioneers. This is the Adopt a Monument theme for 2025 to the beginning of 2026, and it represents a broader project focused on engagement and legacy celebration, particularly through storytelling. It's going to include ongoing work at existing Adopt a Monument sites, especially those with a connection to the wider group of female archaeologists that we've discussed earlier. But why do we need to celebrate women in archaeology? Why is this project relevant and important now? Women are well represented within UK archaeology. The latest statistics from Profiling the Profession, their 2020 survey, showed that 47% of UK archaeologists are women. This matches the overall statistics for the UK workforce. And this is even more so for the younger age brackets, where 75% of the 20 to 2024 age bracket are female. But multiple studies, including a paper by Pope and Teller that was published earlier this year, highlight issues with progression within the field. Their work focused primarily on academia, where they saw a drop-off in numbers of women in higher level academic roles. There are also ongoing issues with misogyny. While these statistics I'm about to share do not only relate to that, it is clearly a huge issue. 74% of UK archaeologists have witnessed bullying or harassment during their careers, and 32% witnessed unwanted behaviour of a sexual nature, while 30% noted inappropriate comments on appearance. These are not necessarily entirely gender-based harassment, but this no doubt will form a significant part of this. There is also an issue with how many women we're missing from the field due to a lack of diversity. 97% of UK archaeologists are white, compared to 82% of the wider population. and 30% come from families in higher professional and management occupations compared to 19% of the population. We're not representative of society as a whole in this way, and there are voices missing as a result. So why do we need to tell women's stories? Partly this is an issue of public perception. As we mentioned earlier, these women's names are not names we know well, and we do not have easy information about them. We've had enough of an experience of this so far with this project in being able to put together a biography, and we've had issues having photos to share with you on a talk like this. We're working to trace back the photos that we have and get the right permissions, and then hopefully find out some more information from the people that do have these photos. A number of initiatives have picked up on these issues. The Trailblazers was established in 2013 by 4 early career researchers, and this came about from a frustration with how women's contributions to their fields didn't get the same mainstream attention as their counterparts. The Trailblazers initiative shared stories via social media and blog posts. And we also now have the Hidden Voices project, which was set up by fellows of the Society of Antiquaries of Scotland. This project aims to boost and create the Wikipedia pages of women who were involved in Scottish archaeology to make the information about them publicly accessible. So if we want to tell the stories of women who worked in the prehistory of the west coast of Scotland, what have we done so far? What are we up to? This is early days of the project, and we have a lot more work ahead of us. Due to various issues, we've delayed some of our field work, and our 3 excavations will now take place early next year. But we have got some little case studies that we can share about what we've been able to achieve so far. So we began our journey in Ardnamurchan, which is this peninsula just here, north of the Isle of Mull. Archaeology Scotland has a long-term involvement with the area, as Phil Richardson is also a co-director of the Ardnamurchan Transitions Project, alongside Professors Hannah Cobb and Ollie Harris from the Universities of Manchester and Leicester. The project began back in 2006 with an excavation at Clyde Andrys, a chambered tomb in Swaddle Bay, and this dig launched the project. It was a direct result of Phil and Hannah having looked at the record created by Audrey Henshaw. In the following years, the project has returned and worked on other sites in the area, including, famously, the Viking boat burial that was found in 2011. The project has trained hundreds of students in archaeological excavation, all centred around this bay. Clyde Andrys was also included as part of the bay in the Wander West Heritage Trail and the Real Wild West Adopted Monument project. I visited the project this summer to discuss the origins, and we took the opportunity to add to the record of sites in Ardnamurchan as well. Importantly, we did this as an all-female team made up of myself, Hannah Cobb, who is a Professor of Archaeology and Pedagogy at the University of Manchester, Katie Sanderson, who is a commercial archaeologist who trained on the Ardnamurchan Transitions project as a student, and Penny Horner of the Ardnamurchan History and Heritage Association. You can see the 3 of them in this picture, with the logos from several of the Ardnamurchan projects on their high-vis. We recorded a site called Ericsson's Cairn. This is a possible early Neolithic monument, and one that wasn't recorded by Audrey Henshaw. In fact, it was found in 2014 by a member of the AAHA while walking his dog. The group then created an initial record, which we've now built upon. We conducted some photography and photogrammetry and created this model that you can see a little screenshot of here. We were able to model sections of the site after clearing away the vegetation and get a record of these 2 upstanding stones here. We've also followed Audrey Henshaw's survey work to the Isle of Arran. I was on the island as part of a separate project, but took the opportunity to go and see some of these sites from the ground. One of the things we are producing is a series of blog posts as we follow in the footsteps of these prehistoric pioneers, while also highlighting work being done in these areas today. And Arran was ideal for this. I visited Giant's Graves, where the remains of the monument are really well preserved, and it It's easy to get a sense of the monument's size and construction that it isn't always the case. Not so well preserved sites can be very overgrown, and it can be difficult to imagine how it would have looked when it was initially built. Here I was able to write a personal reaction to the site and to link up photographs from the site today with Audrey Henshall's plans to offer a more three-dimensional picture of the site that still originates from her work. This blog post isn't live yet, but will be in a few weeks' time, and we're taking the opportunity to do this wherever possible, to build a route through Western Scotland that links people and places that people will be able to follow. And finally, thanks to the generosity of people who we've worked with, we're capturing more people's responses and experiences through interviews. We want to talk about women in archaeology then, with women in archaeology now, especially those with links to pioneering archaeologists who've worked on the same site or in the same area. I was able to do this in Arne Merken, and more recently with Debbie, pictured here, who has led the community group that we work with in Glendaruel as part of an Adopt a Monument project. Debbie and my colleague Andy led a tour to Ochachagan, a site dug by Dorothy Marshall, and there are also links to Betty Rennie in this area too. So our future plans, well, big excavations. We will get the dates for those put in the new year, and then hopefully we can find out a little bit more about these monuments and potentially find some material for radiocarbon dating that will help us really nail down these chronologies and tell new stories about the early Neolithic on the West Coast. We're also crowdsourcing stories about the women that I've mentioned in this talk and others. If you have any pictures, memories, or people that you think we should be celebrating, we'd love to hear from you. Although I should point out that we are specifically looking for women or non-binary people who've made a significant contribution to prehistoric archaeology in Western Scotland. But we are looking to explore their experiences and the connections between them. Because this isn't just about individuals or holding people up as heroes. It's as much about celebrating and building new networks of people at the same time. And telling these stories can be so important in sparking this interest and making your own connections with the people that came before you. We want to raise aspirations both of young people and people with an interest in archaeology that may not know where to start. Because if you see it, you can be it. Something I know very well, as you can see from these two pictures taken 20 years apart. Finally, let's go back to the bay one more time. I hadn't appreciated my first view of Swaddle Bay, my eyes glancing across from the road while I focused on sharp bends and fearless sheep. Now I'm blown away. As much as getting here felt like a journey to an impossibly remote place, here it feels like the centre of the world. From the bay, you can see out to the small isles of Rum, Muck and Egg. Within my first evening, I see a deer on the hills, bats fluttering between the barns, and even the fins of 2 minke whales out at sea. There is also a huge welcome from the people here, the local community and the returning archaeologists, a family that has built up over the years of the project, old faces and new back every summer. It's hard not to feel part of something exciting and to feel an instant connection to the people and the place. I walk down in the direction of the shore, but turn and cross a small and slightly crumbling bridge over the burn. It was installed at the beginning of the Arne Merken Transitions project, now almost 20 years ago. A project that came here as a direct result of Audrey Henshall's descriptions of this place. I push through the vegetation, trying not to catch myself on the brambles growing high all around. Thankfully, the summer rain is falling. Light, but relentless, so bare arms were not an option. I can't resist a smile as I spot the stones. Low to the ground, but a clear chamber arrangement, and I catch my first view of Clyde Andrus. These stones have seen thousands of years of history, have been touched by hundreds of generations of hands, and have shaped and been shaped by hundreds of stories, from the first monument builders grieving their dead, to the pioneering archaeologists driven by curiosity and determination. I hope they will remain here, woven into thousands of stories to come and brought to life again and again. If you want to find out more about some of the things that I've spoken about in this talk, you can look at our Prehistoric Pioneers blog series, which will be posted via our website and linked on social media. You can also look at the Trailblazers initiative. Their website has lots of blog posts about different women who have worked in archaeology and geology, and paleontology, similar fields. And I think their social media may still be active as well. If you want to find out more about the archaeology, you can look at the entries that some of these women in this talk wrote for sites in discovery and excavation in Scotland. And if you're interested in the interpretation of these earliest megalithic monuments, you can check out a talk that Alison Sheridan did for us that's available on our YouTube channel. And if you want to support our work, you can subscribe to our newsletter, Out and About, or you can consider becoming an Archaeology Scotland member, both of which have links on our website. Thank you very much.